Broadcasting live. It's America's longest running talk show on computers. It's Computer America, bringing you the biggest names in technology with guest interviews, new products, and your emails. Listen live at computeramerica.com on any device around the world. Email the show at live@computeramerica.com or find us on social media. Be sure to check out our website for contests, giveaways, show notes, live video stream, podcasts, and more. You're listening to Computer America.
Hello, everyone, and welcome into the Computer America Show. I hope that you are all doing well and you are ready for our program today, because today on the show we have the one, the only, Mr. Ralph Bond. He'll be joining us here in just a moment to talk all things science and technology trends, because he is our science and technology trends correspondent. So everyone, welcome into the Computer America Show. We are the nation's nationally syndicated, longest running talk show on computers and technology, and everyone, hey, turn podcast. Welcome into the program, computeramerica.com. That's where you'll find everything, including the show notes, super important. And of course, you'll find anything and everything that has to do with Computer America. Hey, you can, of course, find it at our site. So with that being said, I hope that you are all ready for the program today. Everything's going well, coming off the holidays, and it's, hey, it's been a crazy year. Hopefully next year is a little bit slower, but is it ever? Is it ever? So with that being said, let's go ahead and bring Ralph on and, hey, just have fun with it. Give you a nice, relaxing Friday that is full of feel-good, positive, technology-oriented stories that you probably won't get anywhere else. So welcome back onto the program once again, Ralph Bond. Ralph, how you doing? Absolutely.
From the world of science and technology that'll make you feel like maybe there still is hope for human beings.
There certainly is.
If you're new to the show, what Ben and I do every Friday is highlight 4 recent articles that show us key trends and developments in a whole range of things: artificial intelligence, robotics, medical technology, sustainable energy technology, transportation advances, agricultural technology, space research, physics. Wow, you name it. Everything you can possibly imagine is open game for us to look at. And most important of all, we're going to give you an oasis of positive news thanks to the world of science and technology.
Absolutely. And for those out there who want to follow along, by the time that you hear this, the show notes will be up on the site. You can follow along and check those out. So if you're busy, we'll have links to everything. Check it out. So Ralph, as usual, we'll start with not story number 432, but we'll start with story number 1.
Yeah, this one has had so much coverage in the scientific community and the technology press and so on. Wow, this one's really profound. This article, though, I picked from livescience.com. Headline: Google Willow quantum chip has solved a problem the best supercomputer would have taken a quadrillion times the age of the universe to crack. What? And there's also some other links in the show notes that'll give you some more background on this. But this is just, wow.
What?
First, we've got to set the stage, though, a little bit here. And the source for what I'm going to share with you came from a query I made to the Microsoft's Copilot AI system, and I put out a question and got the answer. So first, let's set the stage. A quantum computer is a type of computer that uses the principles of quantum mechanics to perform calculations. Unlike classical computers, which use bits as the smallest unit of information with values of either, of course, we all know, 0 or 1, quantum computers use quantum bits or qubits. And qubits can represent both they can represent 0, 1, or 0 and 1, and this is the really weird part, simultaneously, 0 and 1 simultaneously, thanks to a property called superposition. Now, in the show notes, I have some more information tutorial you can dive into, but just a couple of additional key points before we move on. Qubits, the basic unit of quantum information capable of representing, as we said a moment ago, 0, 1, or both at the same time. Ben, that still just makes my mind
Yep,
melt.
that is again a qubit,
Yeah.
not a qbert. Qbert is of course the video game character.
Oh my gosh, I remember that.
Yes,
funny,
qubits are the thank you are the very basic things. It's quantum computers seem very approachable at first, but then they get confusing. So don't let it fool you.
It's weird. It's really weird. And superposition, again, this allows qubits to be in multiple states at once, enabling parallel computations. And again, in the show notes, more background on entanglement and quantum gates and so on. You can dive into that if you wish to, but let's get to the news. So here we go. Google scientists have created a new quantum processor that in 5 minutes cracked a problem that would have taken the world's best supercomputer 10 septillion years to solve. Oh my gosh, a septillion. I'm going to give you the American version of what a septillion is. In the show notes, you'll find out in Great Britain, our cousins have a different way of looking at it. But for us, a septillion is a number with 1 followed by 24 zeros. That's a septillion. And we're talking about cracking a problem in 5 minutes that would take a best supercomputer in the world today 10 septillion years. It just melts your mind. It's just unbelievable. So you can dive into that and learn more about septillion if you so desire through the show notes. But going on, this breakthrough will allow quantum computers to become less error prone the bigger they get, achieving a milestone that overcomes a decades-long obstacle. We're going to learn about what has been, quantum computers, very exciting, very interesting, but they had a kind of disability, if you want to call it that. We're going to talk about how this Willow chip really helps to overcome what has been a decades-long barrier to them being really, really practical, I guess you could say. Mm-hmm. But here we go. Here's the problem. Quantum computers are inherently noisy, meaning that without error correction technologies, every 1 in 1,000 qubits, the fundamental building blocks of a quantum computer, fails. So it's this failure problem that's been a barrier holding back quantum computers. It also means coherence times. This is so geeky. It also means coherence time, which means how long the qubits can remain in a superposition so they can process calculations in parallel. That time remains very short. So those are the problems we've had. Yeah, go ahead, Ben.
Yeah, and it's something that really speaks to even modern computers and the computers that we use. Like Ralph, when people look at if anyone out there has been like a hardware junkie, they will look at like what Intel and AMD and Nvidia put out, and there's like the consumer grade stuff that you can find on your shelf, and then they'll be like, what is the most expensive graphics card? And you'll see a graphics card that costs 10 times as much as the consumer one, but then Ralph, you'll see like the specs of it, the power of it is really not that much better than the consumers. It's really on par, but the difference is that correction. It's that the redundancy and like the accuracy of the calculations that you need for scientific research, for encoding, for making these big movies and whatnot. That's like the error correction is what you're paying like 10 times as much for when it comes to like professional grade equipment, not just consumer grade. So,
yeah. No, it's really, and again, this whole thing has to do with this breakthrough in reducing the errors so that quantum computing can become a more practical possibility. So going on with the article, this high error rate is one of the key barriers to scaling up quantum computers. So they are good enough to perform far better than the fastest conventional supercomputers. This is why research has centered on building quantum computers with better and less error prone, not simply more qubits. That's something the author of the article wanted to stress. Google says its new quantum processing unit, dubbed Willow, is the first in the world to achieve results that are below threshold, meaning below the threshold of acceptable error, a milestone outlined by computer scientist Peter Shor in a 1995 paper way back when. Peter Shor was talking about this challenge in quantum computing. The team outlined the technology in a study published December the 9th, so very recently, in the journal Nature. So I have links here. You can dive in deeper. This is mind-melting stuff, folks. We just gave you the highlights, but a significant breakthrough that may usher in an era when we have viable quantum computers. So pretty cool stuff.
Well, I'm just curious what the problem is that they solved, because, that's a big problem to solve. And they didn't even really talk about, hey, what do we have an answer to? Is that the meaning of life? Like, it's 10 to the 42,000, like, I guess 42,
I
right?
agree. It's probably some really bizarre math thing or something, because you're right. I was curious about that as well.
Yeah, I don't know. But still, the breakthrough in quantum computer has so much promise, so much, we've been hearing about the tangential things that can happen once we get this up and running, including like security, cryptography,
yes,
passwords and stuff like that, like, and even communications. It's all so profound, but hey, you gotta get there. And this is a huge step in that direction. So, good job, Google. And, I think that Intel gets a lot of praise for their quantum computers, and IBM gets a lot of praise for the quantum computers. Good to see that Google is also doing good research in there as well. So,
absolutely. Yeah.
So story number one. And hey, speaking of IBM, let's go ahead and talk about a new study that IBM has put out about vehicles. So let's switch over to story number two.
Yeah, so this story and our next story number 3, are going to be automotive industry related. And this number 2 story, headline, IBM research study, vehicles believed to be software defined and AI powered by 2035. So this is a fun example of a research study that indicates kind of where IBM sees the future of the automotive industry going. So that's our trends kind of theme to this one. This comes from AutoTechNews.com. And we've got the links, of course, in the show notes for you. But let's give you the highlights. The IBM Institute for Business Value, which, by the way, has many wonderful studies, recently conducted a survey of over 1,200 global automotive industry executives to understand the future of vehicles. The findings predict a transformative shift in the automotive sector by 2035, where software-defined vehicles powered by artificial intelligence will be the norm. In a way, it's kind of like, well, sure, that seems very reasonable. But I'll give you an example of the many findings that are in the report. We don't have time to go through it, but here's one. 74% of executives believe that by 2035, vehicles will be entirely software-defined and AI-powered, affecting everything from vehicle controls and functions to in-car experiences. And it goes on to say, software-defined vehicles are expected to generate substantial revenue, with 51% of industry revenue projected to come from digital and software-related sources by 2035, up from just 15% today. And you might be scratching your head saying, well, what? Software resources? Well, what are we talking? This includes revenue from subscriptions, over-the-air upgrades, autonomous driving, and enhanced connectivity. Ben, when I read this story, I thought, this is kind of like my personal computer, where I subscribe to a service that helps cleanse my computer of problems or errors, and that you get the picture. So they're saying the future of the automotive industry is for your car to become more and more maybe like your personal computer or laptop, where you have subscribed to services and get updates and that kind of stuff, right?
Well, one area that I hope that, and we've already seen some legislation proposed in Congress, and who knows where all that's going to go, but one of them has to do with Tesla, and it's this idea, Ralph, that the car is capable of a certain amount of, like, let's say, range in an electric vehicle. And unless you pay Tesla an extra $5,000 for the upgraded package, your vehicle will be artificially capped at a lower rate because you didn't pay the extra $5,000. And then as soon as you pay the extra $5,000, they will send an update over the air and unlock the additional 20% range, whatever it may be.
Interesting. That's a good example.
Yeah, that's one, though, that I think they're going to take legislation and make that not possible, because, like, the only thing here that really scared me, Ralph, was the over-the-air upgrades, where if it is an upgrade that is, like maybe if it's like an update to a user interface, sure. Maybe if it's an update to, sensors, software, sure, whatever.
Yeah.
But like, if there's like a physical part of your car that they're putting behind a paywall, that seems that's almost like if you bought a laptop and, Intel said, hey, you don't get 20% of your processing power because, you didn't pay for the upgraded package.
Yeah.
That's not really acceptable. So I'm hoping that's not the route that they're planning on going. But the rest of it makes perfect sense. And comparing it to your phone or your computer is exactly right, because that is what it's becoming, for sure.
Yeah, and you're right about introducing the phone part as the comparison as well. It's really interesting. So a quick summary from the study. The shift towards software-defined vehicles is inevitable, the study says, but it requires automakers to navigate significant technical, cultural, and workforce challenges. To stay competitive, they must re-architect their vehicle systems, invest in digital capabilities, and embrace new business models. And the transition to software-driven automotive industry will redefine how vehicles are built, operated, and experienced by consumers, making software and AI the cornerstone of the industry's future. And Ben, I think your comparison to this to our smartphones is right on target. That environment we live in with smartphones, where we download apps and we pay for this and we subscribe to that, I think that's where the IBM predicts, based on this interview of 1,200 auto executives, that's a significant pool of people, predicting that this is the trail path we're on with cars. Something to watch. That's a trend. It might be good, might be bad, probably a mixture of both, just like my smartphone and my PC are today.
It's something that we have, after talking to a number of these car companies over the years, they see it as the third space, because up until this point, Ralph, you've had the home and you've had the office, and obviously that's starting to blend a little bit, but traditionally you've had the home, the office, and then now the third space they're predicting is your car, because when you're no longer having to hold the wheel, focus on the road, not die, Ralph, you're going to be sitting there, and not everyone's just going to twiddle their thumbs. People aren't just going to stay bored. And whether it's a 30-minute or an hour a day or multiple hours a day that you're sitting in your car, Ralph, that is time to, sell you meditation apps. That is time to sell you movies. That is time to sell you, online shopping. That is what they're going for. So it's coming. The transition might not be 2035, because let's face it, Ralph, 20 years ago, they're like, every car is going to be electric by 2020. And then, we come and they're like, well, maybe by 2050, most of the cars will be electric. I don't think the timeline is right, but the conclusions that they draw are absolutely correct. So we'll see.
It was an interesting report.
For sure. So there you go. Story number 2. And story number 3, like you said, from cars to cars. This one is really cool. And, I think when it comes to cars, like Mercedes have a very iconic look to them. And, everyone out there, like if I say, think of a Mercedes-Benz car, you immediately think of something silver. At least, Mercedes is known for silver. This time, though, looks like it's, maybe orange. Who knows?
This is really geeky stuff. Again, for the automotive world, this comes from techspot.com. Headline: Mercedes is working on solar paint that could drastically reduce the need for charging an electric vehicle. Excuse me. Enough juice for 12,000 kilometers per year in sunny areas. So let's be fair, in sunny areas. We're going to learn more about this. Again, if you have the show notes, you can see the very interesting concept car image that's in the article. That's just freaky deaky looking thing. But here's the story. Mercedes-Benz is developing an innovative solar paint capable of generating electricity when applied to a car's entire body. The technology could potentially provide enough energy to power thousands of miles of driving annually, significantly increasing the range of electric vehicles while reducing the need for frequent charging stops during road trips. Excuse me. The company states that this groundbreaking solar paint is just 5 micrometers thick and weighs a mere 50 grams per square meter. Bottom line, practically weightless unbelievable. And despite its lightness, it's packed with energy generating potential. And get this, the paint contains no rare earth materials, no silicon, and is made from inexpensive, non-toxic ingredients that are easy to recycle.
Where's the downside?
Yeah, it's win, 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 win. I haven't seen any downside yet. What truly sets this technology apart is its efficiency. Mercedes claims that with an 11 square meter surface area, roughly the size of a mid-sized SUV, like my RAV4, the paint could produce enough energy to power up to 12,000 kilometers, that's 7,456 miles for us, of driving annually under, let's be fair, ideal conditions. So, for example, if you live in Arizona or something like that, you get a lot of sunshine. You could expect this kind of performance. But I'll tell you what, anything I can get, anything, if the paint on my current RAV4 Prime could help replenish my battery and so forth and extend my all-electric mode, great. I would love that. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, 7,000 miles of driving every year just by your paint job. So
yeah, it's
that's
pretty
good.
significant.
That's
the
actually
energy
really good.
harvested could either be directly power the car's electric motors or recharge its high voltage battery pack. That's what I would think makes most sense. Remarkably, the system would remain active even when the vehicle is parked, continuously generating electricity. So, Ben, you may recall in the past couple of years or so, we'll see stories where people are putting solar panels on the car's body. And that's fine, but it's kind of unattractive. This paint idea just is so genius. And of course, real world performance would depend on variables such as shade, sun intensity, and geographic location. As we mentioned before, I think Arizona would be the ideal place for these cars. However, Mercedes has provided some theoretical examples to illustrate the paint's potential. In Stuttgart, Germany, the company's hometown, it estimates that the solar paint could supply enough energy to cover approximately 62% of the average daily driving distance of 52 kilometers using solar power alone. And 52 kilometers is about 32.3 miles. And by the way, AAA, the car association, did a study a few years back and said the average American commutes about 30 miles a day. That's the mean average across the country. So if this paint on your car in good conditions, let's be fair, good solar conditions, could charge the vehicle enough to cover that, you're in a completely sustainable cycle, right? Wow.
Yeah. And of course, this is all, in perfect conditions. But one thing that we know, and especially through our segments with Ralph, is that solar efficiency always goes up. It never goes back down. It's like, oh no, we forgot how to do that. Solar efficiency will always go up. So, today it's pretty efficient. Tomorrow it'll be very efficient, and it will only make sense. It's sustainability is really a big part of what we focus on here on the show as well. And it's going to get there. So. And Ralph, like you said, it's just paint. It's just almost weightless, like in terms of like car weight.
Yes.
It is almost weightless. This is on par, Ralph. I feel like with the technology of putting solar panels in glass that you can't see, but the glass themselves are.
Such. Yes.
Yeah. It's just stuff that you're going to build anyways. Why not make it work for you? So
I know.
Beautiful
I love it.
stuff. Yeah, and of course, Mercedes putting, money and research behind it means a lot as well. So
yes,
there you go. Story number 3, story number 4. We're going to go ahead and jump on down. And this, last week we talked about MRIs and imaging and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And some breakthroughs there. Looks like story number 4 also about imaging, and this one is going to be a little bit more, I guess getting through our squishy bodies and seeing what we need to see is kind of hard sometimes, but this one's using lasers to really get in there. So story number 4.
Yeah. This is a great story, and this comes from MIT, good old Massachusetts Institute of Technology, of course, their newsroom. We haven't done an MIT story in a while, so this is kind of fun. And again, folks, if you're new to the show, we end usually the Friday science segments with something from the medical technology world, and this happens to be coming from MIT. So headline here, non-invasive imaging method can penetrate deeper into living tissue. And the subhead here is using high-powered lasers, This new method could help biologists study the body's immune responses and develop new medicines. Wow. Okay, let's get into this. Metabolic imaging is a non-invasive method that enables clinicians and scientists to study living cells using laser light, which can help them assess disease progression and treatment responses. But here's the deal. But light scatters when it shines into biological tissue, limiting how deep it can penetrate and hampering the resolution of captured images. So that's the problem that we've had to date. Well, enter MIT. Now, MIT researchers have developed a new technique that more than doubles the unusual, or pardon me, that more than doubles the usual depth limit of metabolic imaging. Their method also boosts imaging speeds, yielding richer and more detailed images. This new technique does not require tissue to be pre-processed, such as by cutting it or staining it with dyes. That's another big advantage. Instead, the specialized laser illuminates deep into the tissue, causing certain intrinsic molecules within the cells and tissues to emit light. This eliminates the need to alter the tissue, providing a more natural and accurate representation of its structure and functions. Wow. And here's a little bit about how they did this. The researchers achieved this by adaptively customizing the laser light for deep tissues. Using a recently developed fiber shaper, the device can control it by bending it. They can tune the color and pulses of light to minimize scattering and maximize the signal as the light travels deeper into the tissue. This allows them to see much further into living tissue and capture clearer images. So extremely geeky. Come out to the show notes at computeramerica.com if you want to dive in deeper on this, but it's a significant advancement in the imaging field.
Yeah, and I'm sure just, less prep work, more immediate data. Yeah, that's going to mean so much to so many people. Just, to have that data and imaging available much, much quicker. So there you go. Very cool. And of course, you can see the animation there. And MIT, if you don't know how to get there, MIT, just Google it. But also computeramerica.com will have the show notes. And if you are following along in the show notes, story number 4, as always, was medical. And it's, you may notice that after that, there are more stories. And you think, hey, you guys aren't done. Well, don't worry. This is the honorable mentions are stories that we just don't have time for. We try to keep the shows to about half an hour. Sometimes we do better than other days, but to keep it more concise, we've limited it to 4. But Ralph just can't help himself. He finds so many stories that could make the cut, but unfortunately, we just don't have time for. So we can at least give the nice folks the headlines, and you can go out to computeramerica.com, find the show notes, and find the links to the stories in the show notes. So Ralph, let's at least read them the headlines so when they come out to the site, they'll know what they can find.
Yeah. So last week we talked about diamond batteries. This week, this wonderful honorable mention comes from wonderfulengineering.com. Headline, German firm tests powerful NASA battery that offers 30,000 cycles and a 30-year life. Wow. So check that's another advancement in battery technology. That's
I don't know what it is, but the image that you have in the show notes makes it look like a bunch of wine bottles in like a wine rack. But no, these are batteries. I got you.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting stuff. And again, to stress, this is early technology research, not something that's at your store now.
Right.
Next one comes from interestingengineering.com. Headline, GE Hitachi's collaboration of GE and Hitachi. Their small reactor design closer to deployment in the United Kingdom passes key milestone. This is a great trend example of a move for small-scale nuclear reactors. And this is something that's coming on like gangbusters. In fact, if I recall right, I think Bill Gates is very much involved in funding some of this research. And the next one comes from sciencenews.org. Here are 8 remarkable scientific firsts for the year of 2024. If you want to kind of do a recap of some amazing things, one example, just one, is the first complete map of a fruit fly's brain. Details all 139,255 nerve cells and the 54.5 million connections between them. So you might think fruit fly, yeah, okay, who cares? No. it's the implication is if you can do this with the fruit fly, where can we go from there? Ultimately, maybe to the human brain itself. So that's pretty significant.
Maybe they can figure out which two nerves need to meet for it to fly out the open window that it keeps bumping its head against the not open window. I don't know.
Yeah. And the last one comes from livescience.org. I know the holidays are behind us now as far as gift giving goes, but this is a fun little story that I thought would be interesting for people who parents, grandparents.
Books are good all times of year.
Books for young kids and young adults that focus on science. So this article is called 38 Best Science Books for Kids and Young Adults. Livescience.org. Come out to the show notes at computeramerica.com, and you can learn about all of these different wonderful books if you have a young person in your life you'd like to seed with scientific curiosity and knowledge.
Books are a great present any time of the year. You don't even need an occasion or holiday or birthday. Just give a book. It's going to mean so much. So, Ralph, I want to thank you so much for putting this together. This is almost a book in what you've created here for us, and you can of course find. Oh, yeah, it's working. Okay, you can find that over at computeramerica.com in the show notes for today's program. So, everyone out there, thank you so much for checking that out checking us out. And Ralph, thank you for doing this segment every single Friday. You can of course find Ralph's segments here on Computer America. So with that being said, until next time, have a great day. By the time that we talk to you next, it will have been January 1st. So Happy New Year, everyone. I hope it all goes well. And hey, next year is going to be a lot better. Trust me, folks. I know this. Trust me. So Ralph, until next time, everyone else out there, until next time, we'll catch you then. Have a good one. Have a good day. Bye, everyone.